So it is now time to begin the intellectual tour de force and the formal intellectual part of the evening with the opening question and prepared statements from each of this distinguished panel. Let me begin and get to the core of what is bothering the majority of us. At least it's bothering me, and I hope the majority of us, in order to find answers, in order to focus on key aspects that are pertinent and central to this discussion. I will ask Duke to answer the question first in the specific context of the United States, then Walter in the specific context of China and Asia, and then Fred providing that global big picture. So the question is, how is the world economy recovering from the global economic crisis? What do you think are the dangers of a double-dip recession or prolonged stagnation? So with that, I'll hand it over to Duke and move his presentation up here for all of us.
Thank you, Shyam. Thank you, St. Mary's College. It's quite humbling. The introduction was very humbling indeed. Thank you for making the time to come to this event. I know it's time out of your day or evening, so thank you for that. Hopefully you'll get some information tonight. I don't profess to have the answers to all the questions that have been posed, but we'll certainly give you a perspective. So double tip, well, we'll come to that. But first, I thought it might make some sense to give you a sense of some of the background, a little bit about Bank of the West, to tell you a little bit about what I manage. Then we'll cover a little bit the impact of the financial crisis at a broad level, some perspective on the global economy in terms of both GDP and population and the linkage and so on and so forth. Then focus on the U.S. economy, primarily unemployment, and being from a bank, interest rates is something which is a key thing that I like to follow, but it's all correlated and related. And really some perspective on the outlook in the financial services sector for the U.S. Can you all hear me at the back? Yeah? Great. Okay, Bank of the West. Well, we're in 19 states, about $60 billion in assets, 655 branches, 700 banking locations, so reasonably big. We have about 9,000 employees. So, State of California Chartered Bank. Long history in California. We've been in California for about 130 years. Founded in 1874 as Farmers National Gold Bank in San Jose, part of the gold rush. Our focus is consumer banking and corporate banking. We're ranked highest in customer satisfaction by J.D. Powers in California 3 years in a row. I know we have some folks whose siblings or somebody who works at Bank of the West, so thank you. And as Shyam mentioned, wholly owned sub of BNP Paribas. So that's a little bit about Bank of the West. Moving on, regarding the financial crisis, I think all of you are familiar with what happened. The peak of the crisis was September 15th, 2008. There was an unusual situation where banks weren't willing to lend to each other. And none of the banks trusted the liquidity position of the other bank, and the whole system froze as the peak of the crisis occurred. Lots of failures. We had the Lehman failure. We had the AIG bailout. We had the Bear Stearns bailout. In fact, when I was at Brysam, my boss was Bob Willenstad, who then left Brysam to be the CEO of AIG. And he was there for about 3 months before AIG went under. So we were in the thick of things there. Insufficient capital after write-offs results in many problem banks. That continues today. Several bank failures. We had, how many? 25 in 2008, 140 in 2009, 143 in 2010. This is year to date. The two sort of notable big ones would be IndyMac, which happened clearly in California. WAMU was another one which has an impact in California. But lots of bank failures as we had inadequate capital and inadequate liquidity in the system. Europe thrust into a debt crisis, and that continues today, whether it's Spain, whether it's Greece, whether it's Ireland. I mean, it just, the list continues. As a result of that, when you look at the outcome, as more banks fail, increased government regulation comes into play in terms of, whether it's high capital requirements, or more stress tests to make sure that the banks are safe. And I'm sure Fred will have some comments there. But we really are seeing a tremendous amount of regulation come into play to make sure that from a safety and soundness perspective, banks manage their balance sheet adequately. Government stimulus, corporate rescues, financial injections, so all the TARP injections that you heard about. Enormous amount of liquidity that was infused into the system. Rates were brought down low to make sure that consumption continued. Of course, the outcome was lots of bank failures and business failures led to higher unemployment. And as we sort of come out of the crisis, the higher credit standards that have been embedded in most banks, continue the risk aversion of banks to sort of lend out money. And we see that across the board, not just our bank, but across the board in all banks, where loan growth, driven by two things. One is the fact that consumption is weak, and the other is that the underwriting standards continue to escalate as banks aren't prepared to take as much risk as they were used to.